pleasure of sharing the broadcast booth with Pat Gregoire for the 2017 Minto Cup. He always provides his own unique blend of pop culture and humor to everything he does.
Hold on, before we start, let me get ready.
Oh, wow.
I'm ready to talk Fort Worth.
While he has quickly become the most respected and well-connected insider in the sport of lacrosse. That led him to the job as the color commentator of the Halifax Thunderbirds for their first season.
It's bad, and Bucci scores a big goal for his T-Birds team. Loose ball in the corner. Burke rubs out his man with one hand, and it's a beautiful twister feed, and an even better celly into the glass.
His normal job takes him all over North America to watch sports and get paid for it, if we could all do that, am I right? But today, he joins me on the Mic'd Up Matt podcast. This is my chat with Pat Gregoire. Let's go. As mentioned off the top, he is one of the most well-connected and well-respected insiders in the sport of lacrosse, the color commentator for the Halifax Thunderbirds, amongst a whole slew of other things we're going to get to with Pat Gregoire. I miss you, buddy. How are you doing in these interesting times?
I miss you too, man, and especially after the intro you gave me. That's one of the most glowing intros, man. I'll take it. I love it. But no, it's keeping busy, obviously, a little bit, not a little bit, very crazy. It's good to have lacrosse back, but unfortunately, the NLL season was cut short. First year in Halifax pretty much was perfect, except for the way the season ended. But it's great to have lacrosse back, and hoping that things can get back to normalcy, and 2021 rolls around, and maybe we'll have another NLL season sooner than later.
Well, they're already starting free agency. I want to get to all that first, but you lost an entire season of Junior B lacrosse as well, where you're the head coach of, I think they're still called the West Durham Ironheads. Okay.
Yes.
One of the big news stories anyways out of Junior A, and I'm not sure how this directly affects you, if at all, but 22-year-olds are now able to play, where players are now able to play Junior A up until their 22nd year. A change that basically mirrors what happened in midget, upping the age 1 year there. Does this affect you at all in Junior B, and how do you see this affecting or changing, if at all, Junior A?
You know what? Obviously, it's going to affect us. Maybe not because we're not going to 22 as of yet. There has been some talks that we maybe will follow suit with the Junior A's and go to 22 years old. That's obviously, this has been a long time coming for the OJLL. So if things are going to take a while, we can't just say, all right, we're following suit as well. So there is going to take some time to see if we do follow through. Let's say we don't follow through and we don't. That still is going to affect us, considering now the Junior A's might hold a larger roster, because if by chance the OLA says, listen, we're not allowing that, and if they were to disband from the OLA, which there have been some rumors that could possibly happen, they're not going to be able to be affiliated with the Junior B clubs. So they're going to want to grab, maybe expand rosters to 30 or 25 instead of, the traditional 21, and then have the call-ups. So that's going to hurt us because they're obviously, guys want to play at that next level. They want to go play Junior A. And as a Junior B development league, that's what we want to do. We are wanting to develop players to go to the next level and even further than that. But if we now lose that affiliation with the Junior A team, now it's, what are we developing for? So I think it's still way too early in these stages to see what happens. But I am interested to see what happens. I would like, to follow the Junior A so we can continue the affiliation that we've had with the Beaches and a lot of the other teams, because I think we've seen a lot of growth in Junior B. Obviously, the West Durham Ironheads, I'm a little bit biased here, but We've shown some growth over the last few years. Last year, getting our first playoff win. But there's a lot of up-and-coming Junior B programs, and the reason why they're doing so well is because they're developing Junior A players. Guys are going to these teams to play Junior B because they know they've seen ex-players of those Junior B clubs go on to play with the Junior A team. A perfect example is, the Mountaineers Junior B, now they call them. It's like the Mississauga Mimico blend. They see all those guys that have played Junior B. Now they're playing at that Junior A level. Yes, they haven't had a ton of winning success as of right now, but that's a team that I see that's going to be, a successful Junior B team in a few years. And even if they aren't, winning playoff rounds, you see the development. And I think that's such a huge part with Junior B, and they have to keep that in mind when they do make their decision, that at the end of the day, yes, we want to win championships, we want to win playoff rounds, we want to win a Founders Cup. At the end of the day, it's Junior B. It is that feeder system to Junior A.
And the number of players who are now getting eyes on them because they moved to Junior A as well. Like Mimico is a great example. There was every year there might be one or two, and maybe because they were in the room, unless they were some superstar player. But now that the A team goes, getting to the Minto in 3 years kind of helps that. Whereas there's a slew of players coming out of that team that have now found their way or will in the next draft or two onto NLL clubs. But I think you're right. You did gloss over, though, a playoff series win for you guys. It wasn't just a normal win. Like, you guys took out the Green Gales, and that was huge for your club. And then you basically get your next season taken away from you, but no fault of your own. What were expectations going to be like for this year after building off what happened last season?
You know what? It was sky's the limit. We really felt that we kind of squandered a chance up in Akwesasne as well. That's a great team. Obviously, they lost in the Ontario finals to another really good Six Nations teams, but we had them on the ropes. We beat them 2 games to none on our home floor, and all we had to do was take one. And I know the Turtle Dome's not the easiest place to win, but we were still proud of our season. Obviously, the accomplishment, beating the Green Gales, a team that has been a rivalry for us, but it's always been seen as big brother, little brother. They didn't see it as a rivalry, and we did. But, to go out and battle with them and beat them and move on to the next round, it was huge. And it was huge not just for us to show that we are a legitimate program, but it was huge to show that these players, and this team, we're good enough. We could compete. So we thought, we did obviously lose a few really key players. I think we lost about 8 guys. But the guys that we had returning as well were really, really great players, and that's what's going to be the unfortunate thing. There's probably about 3 or 4 guys that we could have had in our lineup right now that I think they would have been not only just impact players, but I think they would have had a chance to go on to the next level. Maybe not in Junior A this year. They play Junior B with us, and then maybe get a look in Senior B, Senior A, in the other winter development leagues, the Arena Lacrosse League. And that's unfortunate. Now a full year off, I don't know what's going to happen. But say if, they might now, if they get an opportunity to go play Junior A, that's great. That's perfect. But obviously for us, we're going to lose a season out of them. At least they get another year of Junior A. Hopefully they make it on a Junior A team, because I would hate to see these guys, lose out. The last time they played was up in Akwesasne, and that being their last memory of lacrosse, knowing they should have had one more shot at junior.
I think the knee-jerk reaction is that this is a response to the pandemic and giving the graduating players their one extra year. But as you said, this is something that's been kind of talked about for a couple years. It does mimic the midget system. And, it's not just doing it as a response to the pandemic. It's here to stay, and it is moving forward with Junior A's.
And I think you've nailed it on the head, too. You mentioned it already with it mimicking midget, and you want to go back to how it's going to affect Junior B. Well, now you have one less year of a player to go to Junior B. A lot of these guys that aren't ready to make the jump to Junior A, the perfect transition is as a 16-year-old, out of midget, you play 1 or 2 years of Junior B, and then you move on. So now if junior B stays at the 21 age and junior A goes up, now that kid that maybe played, at 16 and his last year midget, maybe now he thinks, that's it. I can make that jump. I can make that junior A team, especially if they are to expand the rosters. Now that guy might be number 28, 27, maybe even 30th, the last guy. He's probably not going to get a ton of floor time.
Right.
But the fact that if he was able to play junior B and be an affiliate and a call-up to that junior A team, I think that's best case scenario. And I think that is what has to happen. I don't know if it's going to happen. Like I said, it would still way too early in the stages to really say if we're going to go to, under 20, 22. But I think it has to, because just you look at the guys throughout the National Lacrosse League that have played junior B, it's insane. It's some of the best players the game has. Shane Jackson, the MVP, played junior B with the Green Gales. Graham Hossick, defender of the year, played actually junior C and junior B. So a lot of people have to realize if you're coming out of midget and you're not playing junior A, that's okay. It's not the end of the world. These leagues that we have, junior C and junior B, it is made for young players to develop, and you will get to that point one day. It's okay. You don't have to play junior A. My big thing is, if you're ready to play junior A, I'm not going to hold a player back. That's just as simple as it is. But if I think a player isn't going to get the right opportunity at the junior A level, I'll be honest, and I'll say, listen, if you play one full season, junior B, get the opportunity to light it up, get a ton of floor time, play special teams, and be a call-up in junior A, play as much as lacrosse as possible, that's great. But now I think with the junior A's going, we might not have that opportunity. And I'm not trying to say the junior A's didn't make the right decision, because I truly believe it was the right decision, not because of just the pandemic, but like you said, midget going to 3 years. You're losing a year out of these guys to play junior and, ultimately win a Minto Cup.
And, even if it's not moving on somewhere after the junior A year or, NLL or senior A, senior B is getting sexy to play right now. Like,
absolutely.
It's a great league. I've had the opportunity to cover Oakville Titans for the last couple seasons and watching some of the OSL, they call it now, being played. And there's some good lacrosse there, and guys who are getting drafted to the NLL out of the senior B loop.
Absolutely. If you watch a President's Cup game, it is
my goodness,
unbelievable lacrosse.
Yeah.
You have NLL players playing in that. Zed Williams, a guy who's been, his name's Eddie Ball Games, Zedzilla, whatever you want to call him. He played in the President's Cup last year, and I think that really opened up eyes to how good of a player he was. And I think some people were saying, whatever, it's senior B, who cares? No, that, especially in that tournament, that is unbelievable lacrosse, and it is such a grind. You play so many games in that one stretch of time. To me personally, I think it's one of the toughest tournaments to win.
Yeah, and even just covering it, like 3-4 games a day, the arena's always some just smoking hot barn that, it's unbelievable. And you get to the end of the tournament, but guys are still somehow finding the energy to do it. And like you said, the NLL guys that are joining those teams, I think of a guy like Andrew Suter, the pedigree that comes with an Andrew Suter that has man cups and has played Peterborough, played out west, and he wanted to play a senior B season.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, it's getting better, especially, with that Ontario loop. Oakville just jumps off the page for me. They're kind of the opposite of some of the other teams that you see, in the Quebec League and maybe even in BC, where a lot of guys, they'll bring in some NLL guys and then filter through. Oakville's just all young guys looking to make a name for themselves, and they are so much fun to watch. They're fast. They move the ball well on offense. Their defense is mean, but they really can score in transition. If you want to watch an entertaining summer ball game, you tune into an Oakville. I'm preaching to the choir because you see it all the time. But they're a great team to watch. And I know we have a direct affiliation with the Brooklyn Merchants. But a few years ago, we were sending some guys over to the Oakville Titans, and it's good to see, some of those guys having success at the senior B level with the Titans and now with the Merchants as well.
Yeah, and there were, having a chance to cover the team, there were guys who openly admitted, hey, like there are teams out here bringing guys in for the sole purpose of getting – no, this is our group, and we want to win this way, and they took it as a challenge. Speaking of the Oakville Titans, and all the games are up on the JVI website if you want to go and take a look. I want to transition now as we're talking about NLL guys, and free agency started. I was not aware that offer sheets were a thing, but apparently they're a thing. And Doug Jamison's name was out there, but he stays in New England. Just kind of talk through that story, because it almost looked like he was on the move, but then he wasn't. And the Twitter battle was what it was. And I mean, it was fun for a while, but I think we all sort of believed he was staying in New England.
Yeah, you know what? That's the thing. Like, I knew there was offer sheets, but it's almost like the NHL, where it's like an unwritten rule. You don't do it. But when I saw that come across, actually even before, when I saw some rumors rumbling around, I usually, if I hear a rumor from 2 or 3 people, I believe it.
It's pretty good.
Goes. You get a couple of sources, it's good to go. But when I heard it from the third person, I'm like, this cannot be true. And then it comes across Twitter. I was like, oh my God, it was true. And the thing for me, yes, I get it. Doug Jamieson, goaltender of the year. He's been a prodigy out of Six Nations for a long time. We've known that he was going to be an elite goaltender. And I think, though, the fact that it made it even more crazier was that Warren Hill, I mean, he had a heck of a season with Halifax. Yes. But with the way that Kurt Stiers runs his team, and he always has done this, if he wants a guy and if he covets something, he's going to go out and get it and do whatever he can to do it. So he saw an opportunity, and he thought that his deal that he was able to give was not going to be able to be matched by New England. And it seemed like it wasn't, but New England found a little bit of a loophole in the CBA, where I won't go too nitty and gritty. I know Steven Stamp has a really good article on IL Indoor if you want to see more of the in-depth of that. But the fact that they were up against having too much bonus, I believe it's $30,000 in bonuses that you can use, and the bonus structure of their contracts, they weren't going to be able to match it. But there's a loophole in the contracts, or the CBA says that you have actually up until, I forget the date, but a certain date where the rosters have to be set, where you can go back and restructure players' contracts. So the whole saying that, you have 72 hours to match, actually, you really have a bunch of months to match it. Yes, you can say, okay, we'll do it, but it's the whole procrastination. I'll worry about that later. So that kind of, upset Kurt Stiers, the GM of Halifax, and obviously New England was upset at Kurt because they thought that they put them in a little bit of a vulnerable position, and then the Twitter goes off. So, I mean, I love it personally. I guess an innocent bystander watching it from afar, yeah, it's great for the league. I think the NHL, I've always said, the offer sheets, if I was a GM, I'd be doing it all the time. And I think maybe we might see it a little more often. But I know it did get a little bit sour. But even if New England's able to structure their contracts and they get him under a contract and get the bonuses figured out, it wouldn't surprise me if Kurt throws out a deal. There's an offer that, they can't refuse, and they make something happen, because I know he desperately wants he really, really wants Doug Jamieson. I don't know if that means Warren Hill's days are numbered.
Yeah.
I don't know if it is. But the way that Warren Hill played last year, he is certainly a starting goaltender. And I know there's a few teams in the NLL right now that would be, foaming at the mouth to get a guy like Warren Hill. And I know Kurt Stiers, I don't think he would just have Warren Hill sitting on the bench and not giving him an opportunity when he knows that he is a National Lacrosse League goalie.
Sticking with New England, then, is it maybe time to hit the reset button, like losing Callum Crawford and a couple other things that are happening in and around that team? It's just, I look at something like that and say, okay, Doug Jamieson, maybe if Halifax wants him, they're willing to give us, some picks. The next 2 drafts are going to be huge. You and I had a text conversation. If the NCAA did go to that rule and the disqualified player, we would have had a super mega draft next year. But
yeah.
If there's maybe some draft picks thrown in and a Doug Jamieson and a Warren Hill or something like that, is that something that would intrigue New England?
I think so. I certainly would think so. I don't know if necessarily New England thinks that it's time to rebuild, maybe more or less retool.
Retool, yeah.
I don't think they're blowing it up because they have some nice young pieces still on that roster. I mean, Andrew Q, everyone kind of had him pegged as the first pick overall. He falls to him. He has a tremendous rookie season. Rylo O'Connor is still there, so he's a very valuable piece on offense as well. Joe Rezateritz. So your offense, you still have some strong pieces there. Like you said, it's a very strong draft in the next couple of years. Maybe you add another on. The defense, it's fast, it's young, it's furious. Will Malcolm had a great season. Greg Downing kind of had a resurgence of the year on defense. You just go through the, Bomberry, that's another name on the back end. That Adam Bomberry, I think he's one of the more underrated defenders. So they have the pieces, but when you lose two huge pieces like Callum Crawford, who is in the MVP race for the last at least 2 years, maybe even more, and a secondary scoring option in Steph LeBlanc, a guy that can really crash and bang. You lose two pieces of that in that. Yes, I don't think it's time to blow up. But I think it's time to say, okay, maybe we're not going to win a championship this season, but maybe next year or the following year after that we can. So let's maybe see what we can get. Let's see what we can bring in. Let's try to acquire some picks. And if that does mean that, you give away the goaltender of the year and you get a guy like Warren Hill back, I mean, I still think they'd be interested about it, although I believe they did have Warren Hill before, but we can be pretty honest with ourselves that Warren Hill has come a long way from the last couple of years, from being, a second string or even a practice roster goalie to a bona fide number one in my books.
Yeah, absolutely. I had him down on my list to talk about a little bit later when we get into a deep dive with the Halifax Thunderbirds, really start to go at them. But before we do, the New York Riptide making moves, starting with Jim Veltman, Dan Ladouceur, and then, like we talked about, Callum Crawford, Leo Stewart, John Harnett. They signed Brent Adams. Everyone pretty much assumes Jeff Teat is going to be next on September 17th. The New York Riptide, this might be a thing here, Patty.
Yeah, you know what? And I think you got to tip your cap to Rich Halisk. He's a guy that obviously he was the one that really turned things around, obviously with the help of his coaching staff, with Glenn Clark. I think they did a really good job molding that New England team into, I think you got to, I don't know if a lot of people wanted to say it because there was the old stigma around the New England Blackwolves where it's like, yeah, well, they're winning games right now, but let's see them win the big ones. Well, they won the big ones this year. And I think if we didn't see this season end, they had to have been the clubhouse leader. They were in first. They looked the most consistent. Me, obviously, being biased, I see Halifax all the time. I would say they would maybe be in the East 1A, 1B. Mm-hmm. But now Rich Halisk goes on to a new challenge. He went to the ownership group before that, but you could kind of see the writing was on the wall when he went in there. You just knew there was no way he was just going to sit back and let that happen. So he clears house, which, you know what, I would have liked to see Reggie Thorpe get another year maybe because as a head coach, not as a general manager, but my thinking as well is why give him another year? Why not just start fresh, bring in who you want? And he goes out and gets exactly who he wants, gets Jim Veltman, a guy who he has ties with from his New England days as well, Dan Ladouceur, who has done a tremendous job in Georgia, and we know what he's done as a player as well. Mm-hmm. And now you have those guys there, so players are obviously going to want to come and play for them. You go out and get Callum Crawford. So now you're looking as a free agent saying, yeah, why wouldn't I want to sign here? They want to win. There's a commitment to win. And Callum Crawford actually said in one of his interviews, he said it wasn't just, the money. It wasn't family was a big part of it, he said as well. But he said the fact that the team and the organization had such a strong commitment to being a championship caliber team on and off the floor. They wanted to treat their players the best. They wanted to, build a fan base, and they wanted to win a championship. And they're being realistic. They're saying, obviously, this year, maybe this isn't the year right now, but 2-3 years down the road, they want to be competing for championships. And I think they've got a pretty good head start. Yes, I think their goaltending is still a huge question mark for me. Obviously, you bring in the youngest of the Orlemans in, but we really haven't seen what he's been able to do at the professional ranks yet. Bringing Nolan Clayton now as the backup. You still have Alex Bouquet there as well. So the goaltending is the big question mark for me. I think the defense is progressing. And now I think the offense, especially in a year's time when Jeff Teat comes, you have Jeff Teat on one side and Callum Crawford on the other. I mean, that's a pretty damn good one punch on the lefty and the right.
Yeah, and like I said, Jeff Teat is pretty much going to be. I think even if he's not going to play this year, as soon as the word came down that he would keep their rights if they went back to the NCAA, I'm assuming the NCAA is on board with this. I don't know if you know anything, but I know in the past, like even with CLAX players who had their name in the draft because it was a pro league, the NCAA just guys declaring for the draft and playing NCAA, that was a big no-no, and they were risking scholarships and things like that. I've heard, obviously, the NLL's take on it. I'm assuming the NCAA is on board.
I haven't heard officially, but I think with the NLL, I think the way that they would do things, they wouldn't go about it and risk, guys losing eligibility, especially after the NCAA gave these guys another chance. So I can't say officially, but I'd have to certainly assume that was the case.
Lacrosse analyst Pat Gregoire, my guest today. So we've talked New York, we've talked New England. We'll go to the club that you call color commentary games for the National Lacrosse League, the Halifax Thunderbirds. As you said, a really good first season, of course, moving from Rochester, but just unbelievable what they were able to do out there in Halifax, and the community got on board, and some of the images that were coming out of, Halifax were just insane. You were right there. What was that like?
Yeah, it was unbelievable. It was really cool to see how much it grew, game after game, weekend after weekend. I got to give kudos to that organization. They did a tremendous job. They had boots on the ground in Halifax, and they were really, really growing the game. And Charlie Ragusa, John Catalano, and Kurt Stiers, and the rest of their staff, they did a really good job, just being there right away. And I think that having the canoe ride from Six Nations to Halifax, that was a great, not only just, a really cool way to tie in the Indigenous community to the game of lacrosse and in Halifax, but I thought that was a really good way to get eyes and to really show, they're coming, the Thunderbirds are coming. And then the game where,
quite literally, they're on their way. Quite literally.
Yeah, exactly. The general admission exhibition game, so people could actually go in and watch, and the place was packed. And then the first game, the home opener, still a great crowd, but it was a little bit smaller than I think maybe some people expected when they saw that first scrimmage. But week after week, more people started showing up, and it got louder and more intense, and they started to fall in love with these players, fall in love with the team. I kid you not, you could not walk around that concourse without seeing purple or orange on someone. The merch team did a great job. Everyone was wearing Halifax merch, and that's also, I have to give credit to the guys on the floor because they played some entertaining games as well. It would be so easy for someone to come into, a game and the team doesn't play well. You don't get that exciting game. Obviously, the game of lacrosse, you're still going to be excited by it. But just how Halifax had so many games where they were so close, back and forth, comebacks, blown leads. It just was a perfect recipe to build a great product on the floor. And I think that's what really, really made, not only just the city of Halifax, the entire province of Nova Scotia and the entire Maritimes. I was hearing of people, driving from, New Brunswick, coming in from all over the place, coming to watch this team. So they really embraced that East Coast lifestyle. And I think it is unfortunate that the season got cut short. And I think right now their hashtag is unfinished business. I do feel like they do have unfinished business. And I think they want to bring a championship to Halifax next season because I think they honestly felt that they were a championship caliber team.
The maritime market, anytime expansion from any league comes up, the CFL has talked about the schooners for forever. They have a pavilion at Grey Cup Fest every year. The NHL has been rumored there a couple of times, and it just seems like a community in a part of the country that's just starving for that, big time thing. And, I just wonder if the Halifax Thunderbirds is that for them, and does it signal, more good things coming down the pipe?
I think so. Honestly, I really do. I think that they, like you said, they've been hungry for professional sports for a long time. I think there's a professional rugby team out there that they get really great fans as well. But I think just the fact that it was in the same building, as their junior hockey team plays, the Mooseheads, when they came in and watched it, they said, "Oh my God, this is so much better than a Mooseheads game. It's a party, and you're watching an unbelievable sport." They couldn't believe it. So yes, they turned a lot of non-lacrosse people into big fans, but there is a decent-sized community growing in Halifax and in Nova Scotia. And those people were the ones, like, as soon as that was announced, they were, pounding the drum, helping out, reaching out to Halifax, the Thunderbirds, and saying, how can I help out? How can I be a volunteer? Can I, what is there that I can do? And I think a lot of those people that were in the grassroots level really helped the growth of the game as well.
So let's talk about the team specifically, because Stephen LeBlanc signs as a free agent. Cody Jamieson's name was out there for the longest time. And when LeBlanc signed, everyone kind of went, okay, well, I guess that's it. They know something we don't. And Jamieson just adds his name to the offense of LeBlanc, Stephen Keogh, Ryan Benesh are the top four. And then you add, I'm going to go on a big list here, but Chris Boucher, Austin Shanks, Mike Burke, Clark Peterson, Kyle Jackson, Eric Fennell, Clay Scanlon. Like, I believe the Pat Gregoire term here is wagon. Am I using that correctly?
Absolutely. 100% a wagon. And they have so much talent. And look, though, you got to think that there's got to be an odd man out, especially on that left-hand side. You look, obviously, Benesh, Jamieson, LeBlanc, those are all three solidified veterans. Kyle Jackson, a little bit of an off season for him, but he has proven that he's been able to produce at the National Lacrosse League level. Eric Fennell has battled some injuries, but he's a big team guy. He's a guy that can crash and bang and free up space and score when he gets his chances. And another guy that wasn't even mentioned is Brandon Robinson. He's a transition player, but they were using him on offense. That's 6 legitimate lefties that you throw them on, I would say maybe half the other NLL teams, and they're probably cracking an everyday roster. So that's the unfortunate thing. I do think that one of those lefties are probably going to find themselves in a trade, maybe for a little more defensive depth. But, I mean, it is absolutely a wagon, and that was the one thing that they did so well last year. Obviously, Benesh, Jamieson, those guys would go off. They put up the big numbers. But you have a guy like Austin Shanks who could easily go off for 4 goals a night. Yeah. Mike Burke was dishing out. You look at the end of the game, you'd be like, well, I thought Burke had a pretty good game. You look down at the score sheet, he had 6 assists. And you just threw out the entire rot. Stephen Keogh had a couple of massive, monstrous games where he not only scored, a hat trick, but they were big goals in the fourth quarter. That was the thing that was so dangerous about Halifax, was the fact that they had so much depth. A guy like Chris Boucher couldn't even get into the roster as a full-time player, and I think he is a tremendous player, and I think he's got a bright future in the National Lacrosse League, but it was just a numbers game at that point. So I don't think –
traded for him or signed him? Because I know he was a new addition too, right?
I believe they traded for him.
Either way, brought him in, and, as you said, had trouble finding his way in.
Exactly. Yeah. I think it was when Calgary maybe picked him up, and then I think they picked him up when was their last year in Rochester, when they had 1 billion injuries and were picking up free agents pretty much, on a weekly basis. But he was a guy that stuck, and I don't know, maybe he's a guy that has some value in a trade as well. But I know the organization really, really likes him, and I think they're holding on to him. Hopefully they can find a way to get him into that lineup. With obviously some of those other players that are getting up there in age. But I don't think they want to trade too many of their offensive pieces, because that was the big thing about the offense, was the depth and the ability of guys to be able to score in bunches every single night. And they were so unpredictable. And I think one of them are going to have to get traded. I don't know who it's going to be. I don't envy Kurt Stiers and Micah Kersey to have to choose who it's going to be. But I think it's going to have to happen.
When I covered their game in Toronto, they were on a run of about 4 come from behind. They ended up being wins. They came back in the fourth quarter. That game just didn't make it. Matt Sawyer was, praising the fact that, like, not how do they do this, but we know it's coming and we were ready for it and we still couldn't stop it. All those names we just mentioned, Warren Hill on the back end, Jake Withers at the faceoff dot, getting those big boys the ball. He's probably the best on the planet at taking faceoffs. Those are the things that I always kind of point to. In your mind, as a guy who sees it firsthand, is that correct, or is there something else that contributes to, besides being down early, late comebacks?
Well, I think if you ask Micah Kersey and the coaching staff, I know Chad Culp said it, one of the assistant coaches, he said a lot of it did have to do with the bad start and the lack of flow for whatever reason it was. They tried so many things where they weren't able to, have a proper warm-up. They tried different things in their warm-up, and it just, for whatever reason, it wasn't working. And then I think it was one of the games where they had a really good start, and then they fell off and almost blew their lead. So it was a 60 minutes effort. That's what they needed to do. But to go off what you were saying, I 100% think that this defensive group and Warren Hill were very underrated. They had so many young guys that I thought were playing unbelievable when the season ended. Warren Hill obviously had a come out, a tremendous season. But the fact that you have Jake Withers at the X, the offense has even said it. They score 1 goal, they know they're getting the ball back.
Mm-hmm.
They know it. All right, boys, we just scored. We're getting the ball back. We have another opportunity to score. Let's cash in. Multiple players have told me that. And to have a guy like Jake Withers to not only be able to win the faceoff, but he can go down and score. He can push in transition. Right. And if he loses the draw,
he's back on D. Yeah.
He's back on D, and he's one of their best players. So he not only is the best faceoff guy on the planet, but he's, an elite defender as well, which they have no problem him guarding one of the, their opponent's top teams. So I think obviously you put all that into a blender. Again, it was a perfect recipe for those comebacks. I think if you ask the coaching staff, they'll tell you we'd prefer not to do that, but they had the capability to know, like, hey, Warren's going to hold us in here, boys. The defense is going to hold us down. Campbell, Hossack, they're going to chip in with a couple of transition goals. We're okay. Let's not panic. I think a couple times it maybe got too easy for them. But I do think at the end of the day, the main catalyst for those comebacks was the fact that, Withers was just a wizard on the faceoffs.
But hey, exciting lacrosse out in Halifax.
Yeah.
keep the fans coming back in bigger numbers if you can keep coming from behind. Pat Gregoire, lacrosse analyst, my guest today, as we now transition into the PLL final weekend for them as they get ready. Chaos and Whipsnakes on Sunday on NBC. And I mean, I felt so bad for the Redwoods last night. You could just tell on the looks of their faces, their players. Nat St. Laurent doubled over. They thought that they had a chance to get the revenge over last year and, move on to that championship game, but just not to be in overtime.
Yeah, it was crushing. And honestly, the way the game started, I was like, all right, well, this thing's over. The Whipsnakes are rolling. The offense looks just as good. But the Redwoods, they're a team that prides themselves off of their defense and playing that hard-nosed style of D. But yesterday, it was the attack that really came to life. And they've been solid all tournament long, but they took over the game. Their midfields were firing as well. But another heartbreaking loss. They lose to the Whipsnakes last year in the finals, and you've really got to feel for them.
In overtime again, too.
Exactly. Another overtime loss. And I don't think they've really done anything wrong here. I think this is a very strong team. I think they did a great job picking up Miles Jones as one of their top midfielders. I think their attack core is set. Having Clark Peterson as a guy that had a little more responsibilities this year and as a starter, I think he had a tremendous year. The two Notre Dame attackmen, the dynamic duo that they had with Garnsey and Kavanaugh, I thought they were tremendous. And I think in the draft, it'll be huge. I think they go out and, get a face-off guy in TD Ireland if he's still available. I mean, if you look at the draft, the way it falls, I believe the Chrome, the Water Dogs, and the Atlas are in front of them. Well, you look at the roster, they all have elite, probably the best face-off guys on the entire planet. So with Withers, with Baptiste, and then with Connor Farrell. So they're not taking TD Ireland. So he's going to fall right into their laps for the Redwoods. They'll get a legitimate face-off guy, and then now I think they're a team that now that they've been deep, and maybe with a full season, because this was a short tournament, maybe with a full season, who knows? Maybe they would have been able to kind of figure things out, and maybe that second half team that we saw last night would be the team that we'd see going forward.
They also seem to have these just unfathomable, unexplainable lapses late in the game. Like there was a timeout that Nat St. Laurent called and they immediately went offside. And then a timeout that's called when they're on a breakaway off the face-off. Like just the little things like that I watched the game and I went, why? And an air gate attempt in overtime why?
Yeah. It's true. And that's really surprising to me, considering the way that Nat St. Laurent coaches his team. He's all serious. He really prides himself off of playing a full game, 4 quarters, not letting off the gas, and not giving up until it's over, and playing smart. And this tournament, not only did turnovers and, like you said, just these plays where you just scratch your head, but they also were very undisciplined. They took a ton of penalties as well. Mm-hmm. It just seemed that they didn't necessarily lose to the other team. A lot of the times it was them beating themselves. And I think that's even more frustrating, knowing that you lost in overtime and you look at all the little, small little paper cuts that caused you to eventually lose. I think they're going to go back and realize, we really blew this chance. But with that being said, they were hungry at the start of this tournament. They're going to be even hungrier when it comes next year. And hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll have a full season, a full tour going all over the place. And I think I would be really interested to see them in a full season where they're practicing, they're kind of ironing out those kinks and see what they could do.
The Chaos had already made it into the championship game last night. They had to wait an hour before they played the Whipsnakes and the Redwoods. Let's not talk about that. We're focused.
Yep. Next.
Yeah. Next. What matchup would you had rather have seen? Because we're getting Chaos Whipsnakes. I'm saying it right now. Take the over, because I think they're just going to shoot the lights out, these two teams. Whereas Chaos Redwoods played earlier on in the tournament to the lowest number of goals in PLL history. The fact that it's on NBC, I talked to Chuck Lott about this. There are going to be people who are going to accidentally watch this game because they're looking for hockey or something else. This might be the game that attracts them, but in terms of lacrosse and people like you and I would love to watch that defensive battle with the Redwoods. Which game would you prefer, and which one do you think is more beneficial for the PLL going forward?
You know what? Surprisingly, me being a defensive guy, playing defense, coaching defense, always giving the love to the defenders, I want to see some goals. I'll be honest. Hammer the over. I want to see goals. And I think it's a better story, too. I think having the Chaos, looking so, I'll say it, bad. Not themselves.
Bad. Yeah.
They were not good in the round robin. It was not the team that I expected. I picked them to win. They were my favorites. I took them in my bracket. I was praising people who weren't even lacrosse people asking me about this tournament. Watch out for the Chaos. They're stacked with offense. They're going to be so much fun to watch. Games on NBC. My buddies who aren't even lacrosse fans are saying, man, this is not the team that you talked about. And I had a little small feeling that one of these teams, because every team made the playoffs, I had a feeling one team was either going to have one win or no wins and go off. And when I saw the Chaos finish, how poorly they did, and you see the video of Blaze Reardon just absolutely firing up that locker
Oh my
room.
goodness, let's go.
Like insert running through a GIF,
Yes.
running through a brick wall GIF here, because
Yes.
that, when I saw that, I was like, this team can do some damage. And what do? We see the offense that we finally were waiting to see. And I think the big thing was the midfield. We saw the midfield get involved. Austin Stott started looking way more comfortable. Dane Smith looked way more comfortable. And I thought that just the whole team itself just finally came together. And yes, in a short tournament format, normally you lose, all your round robin games, you're going to count yourselves out. But if this was a full season, losing 7 games in a row, that's not great, but you still have a good chunk of the season left. And I think that's probably the way they were looking at it. They said, listen, we'd prefer not to lose every single game, but if we do, oh well, we know we have one more game left. And that's exactly what happened. They finally figured it out. Obviously, not having Connor Fields in there kind of blew my mind.
Yeah.
But the way that they explained it, Connor Fields is a dynamic Dodger. He likes the ball in his stick. He likes to attack the cage. The way that really worked well for them when that ball was spinning around and the ball wasn't dying in Miles Thompson's stick, it wasn't dying in Curtis Dixon's stick. I thought that they were really sharing the ball well. It wasn't so much an attack-driven team. Now they started being able to be, dice you from the midfield or score in transition. So they became way more dangerous. And finally, we saw that offense that everyone expected to see. And I think from growing the game standpoint, you have the Whipsnakes, who have been an absolute wagon from start to finish. Matt Rambo and Zed Williams, those are 2 guys you want on primetime on, cable television to grow that game. And then you match it with not only just the fact that the Chaos score a lot of goals now and they're a flashy team, but they're a loud mouth. They're in your face. Andy Towers is an electric coach.
Yes.
I think the football fans are going to really appreciate the approach that Andy Towers takes to the game. And I think the loudmouth lacrosse that the Chaos play, I think that's going to attract a lot of casual sports fans.
The fact that they're having so many games on NBC, I didn't even realize it until I interviewed Chuck Lott. He said, they're capitalizing on what would have been Olympic spots. These are Olympic, NBC had it. They had open time slots. Hey, let's put opening weekend on. There's a couple more games that went on. And think back to 2 weeks ago, there was no NHL. There was no NBA. There was Fight Island had a couple UFC things, but people were just, again, starving for sport. And I think this is just a great opportunity for fans who are looking for that excitement to tune in. And hopefully Josh Byrne does something disgusting again, because
unreal, man.
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Yeah. I mean, if you watch that, how could you not immediately become a fan of lacrosse? I know we're obviously biased. We love the game. It's been a part of us for a long time, but I think it's those teams, and I think it's even the way that the PLL has approached the broadcast, having guys mic'd up, having those immediate interviews right after a goal, the camera angles that they've had, the slow-mo. Hats off to the production crew at the NBC, and hats off to Paul Rabel and the entire PLL advisory board, what they were able to do with the bubble, this format. This format itself is electric. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think having a full season is definitely way better for growing the game, and a more, obviously you can get ticket sales and all that when fans are in the stands. It's that festival environment. But I do think that they're on to something here. I would not be opposed to having them have this tournament style as their playoffs going forward. I think it would be awesome. I really like it. I think it really has that March Madness style of vibe. I don't know if it's you have seeding, then you do the play-in games, and then it's the bracket. I don't know, but what they have here is something special, and I think they've struck gold, and I think they got to keep digging. They got to keep staying on this, because I think lacrosse is about to pop off, especially with what the PLL has been doing here.
Patty, the wheels are turning right now. You wouldn't do something like a mid-season tournament that just, maybe there's something on the line at the end of that tournament, but it's something in the middle. I'm not knocking the playoff idea. I love that, but the fact that you would definitely have to have like we see in the playing round now. You know, one team is a bye. You might not get to see the best team. I don't think it's, I don't know. No idea is perfect, but
Right.
I'm just wondering about maybe a mid-season tournament as opposed to, because like you, I like both aspects. I like the festival feel. I like the ticket sales. I like because I think what they brought last year was excitement. They brought energy. People that had watched field lacrosse and said this field lacrosse thing is like boring, and they stall, and then they watched PLL and went, oh my goodness.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing too, the game itself, the smaller field, the shorter shot clocks, the way the game's played, it's a hybrid of box and field lacrosse in my opinion, and it's physical. So I think that there itself, yes, that sells the game. A mid-season tournament's not a bad idea. I never even thought of that. I know the NBA is kind of thinking about doing something like that as well. I think if you put money on the line, why not? Players will play for money.
Especially lacrosse players.
Absolutely. So I think if you have it, if it's just for a random trophy, I don't know if the players are going to care about it as much as just any old regular season.
Right.
But I think if you put some sort of, prize there, whether it be, like I said, money, or maybe it's for the first round draft pick next year, I don't know. But you got to put something there. And I think that mid-season, for some money, have bragging rights. It's got to be more than just the bragging rights. I think that's a great idea. You put it on NBC. You have it one weekend. I think that could be a winner right
there. Championship game, 12:30 Eastern time is 10:30 in the morning. As we said, like, these are Tokyo Olympic spots. They're competing with hockey games. I understand why it's 10:30, but like chicken and pasta for breakfast is not my idea of a good time. How is this time thing going to work out for these players on Sunday?
You know what? I think the players have, they've been in this bubble for a while. They've been getting up early. They've been doing their morning shoot around. So they're going to have to get up a little bit earlier. They're probably, like you said, they're probably not having their chicken parm. They might change their pregame meal. But at the end of the day, these guys are supreme athletes. They are creatures of habit, so I'm sure some of them might be thrown out of whack. But anytime you're playing for a championship, you can find ways around it. I think they're going to find ways around it. And I think a lot of the guys know as well that, yes, they're going to have to play at a weird time, which they're not used to or they haven't done since their minor lacrosse days or their high school tournaments or summer ball or fall ball tournaments. But it's for the greater good of lacrosse, like you said. It's a perfect time slot. They're not competing against hockey. They're not, they're not competing against baseball. They're not just going to be on NBC Sports Gold, so only lacrosse people are logging on. Right. This is a time slot that casual sports fans can flip on. And as soon as you see championship series finals, people are going to be like, whoa, this is a finals. What's this for? So all that, the players know this is for the good of the game, and I think they'll realize that. And I think that it's not going to make the game any worse. Maybe it's a little bit of a sluggish start, but I mean, with those two teams playing, I think whoever flips that game on NBC is going to be in for a treat, whether they're a lacrosse fan or just a sports fan.
So it's time. I need your pick, and I'm not waiting for your Twitter either. I know you're on a bit of a snide, so viewer beware. Pat Gregoire, Chaos or Whipsnakes, who wins on Sunday?
I think I honestly I want to take the Chaos because it's a great story. I'm very familiar with the guys on the team, with them being a lot of the guys, the box lacrosse, the National Lacrosse League players. But just that
Are you allowed to say National Lacrosse? Is that okay?
Oh, yeah. Sorry, the Indoor League.
There you go. Okay.
The Indoor League. Veterans of the Indoor League. No. I'm going to go with the Whipsnakes, but if the Chaos end up winning and I'm wrong, I'm going to be okay with that because I honestly think that's a great story. I know there's going to be some people who are going to be upset that a team that didn't win a single game in the round robin end up winning the championship, but that's what this is for. It's a crazy tournament. It's supposed to create chaos. Yes, I know. I can't believe I made that one, but it is. That's what it's supposed to be. So I will say the Whipsnakes, but if the Chaos come out here and win and upset and shock the world, I won't be upset and I won't be surprised. I think the gambling line right now is +2.5 for the Chaos, so they're getting 2 goals. So Whipsnakes are a 2.5 favorite. I'd take the Chaos with 2 goals. I think they're going to keep it close. And like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if they do come out on top. And you already mentioned it. Hammer the over. These two teams are going to come out clinic.
I don't even know what the over is, and I know
23. I just looked. It's 23 points.
23? So. No.
Yeah.
Alrighty then. Okay. Your MVP pick, and why is it not Zed Williams?
Okay, fair enough. I'm going to go with Joe Nardella, and that seems like a lot of people are saying Nardella. And I think just what he's been able to do for the Whipsnakes, and yes, Zed Williams has been incredible. You know, Matt Rambo has been unreal. I think now with maybe the Chaos, if the Chaos win the championship, I'm giving it to Blaze Reardon. He's been that rock the whole tournament. But I'm going to say Nardella because not only has he dominated faceoffs, he's been involved with the offense. He's picking up loose balls at an alarming rate, and when he plays defense, he's one of the best short stick D-middies out there. He's just an absolute freak. He's gotten so good in the last the last 12 months, and even what we saw him do at the National Lacrosse League level is impressive with New England. I think he's right now the clubhouse leader, but if Zed Williams or Rambo go off and the Whipsnakes win, I'd be okay with them. But I do think if the Chaos end up coming out here and winning, I'd have a hard time not giving it to Blaze Reardon because he was their most consistent player even when they were losing every single game. He's the guy that rallied them in that locker room. And whenever that Chaos team did have some lulls, he's the guy that was standing hard, as a rock, making those big saves, making those outlet passes. And I think if you ask any player on the Chaos, they'll tell you who the MVP is.
Yeah, just everywhere that I read, as good as Zed Williams was, he wasn't in that conversation, and no argument with you on either of those picks. Like I said, Chaos and Redwoods played that lowest goals in history game, and people look at the Troutner save in overtime on Dixon, which was unbelievable. And, Blaze Reardon and him went absolute save for save that entire game. I think it was 22, 25 saves in the game, something like that for Blaze. For a runner that you and me know him as a runner.
Exactly. It's ridiculous. He's such an unbelievable lacrosse player, like a lacrosse player. I mean, he plays, like we said, he's a forward in the box game. I remember him playing for Aguasasne, winning a Founders Cup with them as a forward, and then seeing him, go to Albany and be a goalie. It was quite impressive. And then he goes on to pro ranks, playing as a forward and then playing as a goalie in the field ranks. I don't know if you could say he's the best lacrosse player in the world because I don't think he's there yet in the box game as a forward.
Right.
But how could you not at least have him in the conversation when he plays 2 completely different positions at the professional level? Like, that is just remarkable.
Well, I just remember, when Colin Doyle played goal in the Mann Cup, did not look anything like Blaze Reardon played goal in the field game. It just well-rounded for sure. And like I said, my first experience with him was when he was the MVP of the Arena Lacrosse League Championship game with Whitby. It's like 6 goals, 9 points or something, like just disgusting. And of course I turn on PLL and he's a goalie, which I find out he's been doing forever. So it is what it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
The PLL trophy was released yesterday. We'll get you out on this one. Does it survive the celebration? Chuck Lott said yes, because they're still in the bubble and there's only so much celebrating you can do in the bubble. But I want to hear your take because I'm not buying it.
So are you the on-field celebration or when they leave the field and go?
You take this wherever you want to go because you and I know they're both different celebrations.
I'll be honest. If it gets out of the bubble, I would be beyond shocked. If it gets back to their hotel, I would be shocked. Put it that way.
Which isn't it like next door to the field?
Yes, it's very close. Okay. Hey, it's a cool looking trophy. it's got that soccer vibe. I prefer the old school looking trophies, but I see what they're going for. But especially if it's that Chaos team, and I know some of the guys on that team, I would be very, very surprised for that trophy to make it through the night.
When I saw the glass trophy last year, I thought this has got bad news written all over. And then I saw they did it again, even though nobody last year. We all know there's a story somewhere, and we all know there's probably no trophy to be found. Nobody will admit to anything happening to last year's trophy, but they released a new one this year, so it is.
Yeah. Hey, if they want a new trophy each year, by all means, go.
Yeah, but you can't engrave your name on the little plaque unless it's, made from the bits were left over from last year. That would be kind of cool.
Oh, that's classic. That's classic.
Pat Gregoire, as I said off the top, lacrosse analyst. We've ran the gauntlet with pretty much everything that's going on, and I even skipped some stuff in my notes. I could talk lax with you all day. Real pleasure to hear your voice, see your face, and be safe, my man.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot for having me, man. This was a lot of fun. Like you said, anytime we get together, I feel like we end up not leaving the arena until, usually it's because you guys are cleaning up, but I usually distract you guys from actually cleaning up.
Yeah, so it's definitely your fault. You heard it here first on the Mic'd Up Matt podcast. Pat Gregoire, you can check him out on, you're going to have to help me here. Island Door, you're still there?
Yep, still Island Door, also contributing with the Lacrosse Flash as well.
Lacrosse Flash.
And then, of course, next season, we will be back with the Halifax Thunderbirds, and hopefully, like I said, sooner than later.
I think that's our cue. All the best to you, Pat. I hope you and your family with 2 and 4 legs are all well. Thanks for doing this, my man. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, man. Stay safe.
Absolutely. You too. Pat Gregoire, my guest today on the Mic'd Up Matt podcast.